Hey, what's up, you guys? This is Nitin here. Hi, everyone. How's it going, guys? It's been even here. Welcome back to How Twin Things. This is how Brownish Twins reacts to anything, basically on internet. So if you wanna see us react to any videos, comment them in the description down below. So now we are going to react to Marvel behind the scenes. Let's get into it, guys.
Wow.
We've said goodbye to some
I
of
think
our
I'm gonna
favorite
learn how to
MCU
make video.
heroes, and some of
Wow.
us reacted
I think it will
by
be like
trying to
sound
blame
like
our
cameras.
sniffling and crying on
But
other
it's not like a
kids.
tutorial
But let's
video.
take a look at how the
They're gonna
stars
show, like-
themselves cope with their last days on set, and whether or not they think they'll ever
It's gonna
return
really
to the
funny,
MCU.
like, watch, how they made it.
Okay, so Tom Holland's Peter Parker still very much exists in the MCU, at least as long as Sony and Disney keep playing nice with the movie rights.
Wow.
But his character's role in the Infinity Saga was an important one, even if he spent a lot of it as a pile of ash.
Legendary, you know?
Marvel has been known to be secretive with its scripts, undoubtedly because of the stars like Tom Holland's The One-Man Spoiler Factory. So it's not surprising Disney decided
Oh.
against giving him the script for
None of
Avengers
the,
Endgame in its entirety,
it's
which
so-
is why he
it's
walked
in a
onto
movies,
set to
like,
film the final
like
scene,
this big, but,
expecting
I
something
would say, like,
very
Marvel is
different than
like
what
this,
ended up
like,
happening.
they
After
make,
the
like,
dust
super
settles from the
amazing
final
content.
confrontation with
I don't know
Thanos,
how they're
everyone
making all
who's
this, like-
anyone in the MCU showed up
They
for the
probably
funeral
agree,
of Tony Stark.
yeah,
Only
yeah,
Tom
like,
Holland
elements
thought he
around
was
the
going
world,
to be
you know?
filming
Like,
a
every
wedding
second-
instead. Apparently, the crew was
They
so
speak, like, every
worried
second
about
to, like,
Holland's ruining
every
the
single,
ending
like,
that they told him his
animation
character
studios
would be
around the
attending the nuptials
world.
of Tony Stark
Man
and
from
Pepper
Iron Man.
Potts. So could you
Perfect.
imagine his surprise when he showed up to
Yeah.
Tony's
He
funeral
couldn't, like,
instead? In fact,
digest
Holland was so
the thing,
disappointed
like,
that he vowed to
Tony Stark
work on his
has been the
secret-keeping skills for
past
future
like,
films, a vow that came a
there's-
little too
there
late
isn't
for
gonna
some
be,
of
like,
his Spider-Man
like,
Far From
rest of
Home
the
co-stars.
Marvel
According to
movies.
Zendaya and
That's-
Jacob Batalon, who play MJ and Ned respectively, Holland revealed Tony Stark's fate to them before they got to see the film like everyone else. Apparently, although he was blindsided by the
Sorry,
wedding
Dad.
funeral mix-up, he
they
did know
said
what would happen to Tony in advance.
it's a rumor,
Even though
guys,
the
don't
final
believe
scene
that.
wasn't the wedding Holland had hoped for, he and his
I
co-stars
again
still
lost
had
my
a
hope.
blast filming this somber moment. He shared a behind-the-scenes video showing his co-stars laughing and clearly acting in defiance of the no cameras
Wow.
on set rule.
Hulk is wearing a suit, yeah.
Although
he's the
Avengers
director.
Endgame co-director Joe Russo described
I know,
Robert
but
Downey
I'm gonna
Jr.
let
as
this happy.
one of the sweetest,
No, it's
warmest
not
human
his full
beings in the
name,
world,
it's
the
full
star
John
apparently
Drake, but-
didn't want to dwell on the emotional ending of his
Basically, her name
character.
is
Some
Happy.
hugs and applause from the cast and crew were apparently
that's
all
not
he had
Iron Man.
patience for before moving on. But there was one thing that wasn't
there was,
quite
like,
right the first time they
200
filmed
people
his
working
final
on that.
scene,
Just
and
for
it
the
required
scene,
him
guys,
to make a
just for the-
return to the
Every
set.
single
His
day there was,
I
like,
Am Iron Man
300
line
people
from the
working
first
in, like,
movie was
it
one
was-
Robert Downey
it was just,
Jr.
like,
came up
shooting
with
for, like, a
himself.
minute
I am
video
Iron Man.
or something.
So in a way, this reshoot was really all his fault. At first, Tony Stark snapped his fingers without saying anything, saving the day at the cost of his own life. But soon after, the Russo brothers decided staying silent instead of making a
Imagine, like,
snarky remark just
there were, like,
wasn't really Tony. Thankfully,
Woman
editor
twins
Jeff
who
Ford had
were
the
the
idea
director
of
of those
bringing the
movies.
franchise full
Will be
circle
up
by
this
having Tony say, "I am Iron Man." Apparently, Downey was reluctant to return to the set and get back in that emotional state, and it took some convincing for him to say the line before it could be included in Endgame. The Russo brothers say they were worried about how Downey would feel about the end of his character arc, but despite some
Iron
mixed
Man.
emotions, he apparently signed off
Iron
on
Man,
Tony's
Iron Man,
ending.
Iron
But
Man.
other than the
can't, like,
one
believe, like,
fateful line, Tony didn't have a lot to say after that fateful finger snap. Downey knew that after spending many years showing off his wit, it was time for Tony to stay quiet. It seems like just yesterday, the collective Marvel fandom was losing their minds over Chris Evans' cryptic tweet about the last day of filming. He called it an
Yeah, the
emotional
emotions
day
are
to say the
very
least, and
perfect
thanks
and-
the cast, crew, and audience for the memories. You can practically hear everyone screaming that Captain America was going to perish terribly at some point during Endgame. But as we now know, he survived the film after going
Yeah,
back in
he was
time
born.
and living his
When
life
he
out
came out
with
of
his
the
true
time
love,
portal.
Peggy Carter. It was a sweet moment for those of us watching watching the movie, and behind the scenes, the cast and crew erupted into
You guys
applause
get
to
that,
celebrate
right?
Evans's
He's a
years working on
plastic fan
films for the MCU.
of
It was
Marvels, you
definitely
know?
emotional,
He's a
and it had a
DC guy
surprisingly
attacking
huge
guys.
impact on
Comment
Chris
down below.
Evans's mom. Apparently, she just
loser.
wasn't ready to see her little boy as an old man, because he looked just like his late grandfather after he got done up in hair and makeup. Although this particular scene hit too close to home, she said Evans was glad he took on the role of Steve Rogers, despite the fact that he had been hesitant about it from the beginning.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, I know.
Early on, Evans worried about losing his anonymity by taking on such a huge part, but he definitely made some lifelong friendships, including Thor actor Chris Hemsworth.
There are
According to
four pieces in the
Hemsworth,
movie,
Marvel
you know
wouldn't
that?
pair them up
And
for
most of
press
the guys
tours
would know
because
that.
their brotherly bond often inspired them to goof off rather than stay on track. And while hanging out with his successor, Anthony Mackie, Evans accidentally revealed that his character would soon be handing over his shield. Apparently, he missed the memo about which stars were privy to that important information. Although he felt bad for ruining the moment, he and Mackie were able to bond over the script before filming their final scene together in Endgame. Although Avengers Endgame wasn't Scarlett Johansson's last time portraying Natasha
Natasha
Romanoff,
Romanoff
it was her character's
is a black
final
widow just
chronological
because she
scene.
had a
Her
husband who
standalone
was,
movie
like,
Black
Russian
Widow will
Superman.
take place after the
You know
events
that?
of Captain America Civil
You
War
have to
and
read
prior
the
to the
comics,
beginning
guys.
of Avengers
You
Infinity
have to
War.
get
Johansson
knowledge,
felt
you
that
know?
Natasha's heroic sacrifice was true to her character, and
That's
she
what
looked forward
gonna
to the
happen in Black
prospect of
Widow.
seeing her
The
pass
upcoming
with honor.
movie.
She claimed filming her final
catch
scene
up
with co-star
to the-
Jeremy
the
Renner
comic
was
books, you know?
bittersweet. Even the promise of her
What's
own
gonna happen
standalone
there?
film didn't make that day on set any easier to deal with. We all know Natasha ended up sacrificing herself so her best friend Clint Barton could get the Soul Stone and undo the decimation.
we
But
have Black Widow
originally,
movie
it was
coming out.
Clint who was
So
going to
some
take
movie
the
I wanna
quickest
see
path
that.
to the bottom of the
But not
cliff.
Iron
Ultimately,
Man.
the writers decided that it was
So,
Natasha's sacrifice to make and noted that she made it to save her family and not Cliff's family. Despite feeling like it was the right move, Johansson admitted to being sad about losing Natasha. Endgame tired her out both physically and emotionally, but she said working on the standalone Black Widow movie helped bring her a much-needed sense of closure.
What do you call
Of course, we all mourned the heroes we lost during the
He's a
Infinity
fan of
Saga,
Avengers,
but
but
let's
after
not
that-
forget that we also
can-
said goodbye to the
Yeah, yeah.
Mad Titan.
I am inevitable.
This character had been lurking around the MCU for years, starting back in the Avengers, and while he was a major villain, Josh Brolin is not. At least, not as far as we know. While audiences cheered to see Thanos finally vanquished, the cast and crew had a different reaction behind the scenes. In order to let Brolin know how much he'd be missed, his fellow Avengers Endgame cast members burst out into song. It turns out this particular day on set was also Brolin's 50th birthday, and his friends couldn't resist regaling him with their version of Happy Birthday. While that surely was a touching moment, Brolin had to wait 14 long months before he could share the clip with his fans. Apparently, he really didn't want to join the ranks of Mark Ruffalo and Tom Holland by posting potential spoilers. Even though Brolin celebrated his 5th decade of life while working on Endgame, that doesn't mean his dad can't be proud of him. James Brolin reveals that he couldn't keep up with the plot of the Infinity Saga, but said that he was very proud of his son's role in it regardless. Really? What's so hard to understand about a giant purple alien collecting magic rocks so we can wipe out half of all life at all the universe in order to save it? Now that I say it. Although Brolin ended up getting dusted, he very nearly had to film a totally different scene during the final battle. According to screenwriter Christopher Marcus, Thanos nearly emerged from a portal carrying the head of 2012's Captain America. This would have definitely been surprising, and a lot less feel-good than seeing Cap wields Mjolnir. But in the end, Marcus decided it was a step too far and scraps the plan to have Thanos go back in time and take out past versions of the Avengers. At first, Idris Elba wasn't exactly thrilled to be playing the part of the all-seeing Heimdall in the MCU. In fact, he didn't even know what the MCU was when he was asked about it during an interview. Apparently, he wasn't very familiar with the abbreviation for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which makes sense considering his time on set likely wasn't spent getting that meta about it. Saying that Elba didn't enjoy working on the Thor movies is a bit of an understatement. Let's just say he liked it as much as most fans liked watching Thor Thor The Dark World. While filming that particular entry in the franchise, he went back for reshoots after wrapping up his work on Mandela Long Walk to Freedom. Following that up with being strapped in a harness and having to wear that helmet ripped his heart out, according to Elba. But finally, his time in the MCU started to turn around when Taika Waititi stepped in to direct Thor Ragnarok. Like pretty much everyone else, Elba believes it's the best Thor movie, and it got him excited to portray Heimdall properly for the first time. But while that's great and all, we all know how this story ends, with Heimdall being destroyed by Thanos during Infinity War. While he enjoyed working on the film more than the first couple of Thor movies, he wasn't ready to leave the MCU just yet. He says he'll miss playing the character he spent 2 films resenting, and hopes he'll have a second chance at the role. It might be easy to dismiss this as wishful thinking, but Elba correctly pointed out that Heimdall is pretty much a god, so the idea of him being resurrected or otherwise finding a loophole in the continuity wouldn't be that crazy. It wouldn't even be the craziest thing to happen during the Infinity Saga. Have you made your peace and said goodbye for good to these Marvel characters, or are you hoping one of them will make a triumphant return later on? Share your opinions with us in the comment section below, and then be sure to click subscribe for more videos from Screen Rant. Bye for now.
They will exchange for Captain America to revive Tony Stark. We are hoping that. We are big, huge fan of Tony Stark.
Thank you so
Not
much for
Robert
watching,
Downey.
guys.
Comment down below who is your favorite superhero
And what are the
in Marvel.
videos? Yeah, do you
not
want
on
us
DC.
to react anything? Please leave it in the comment section. We will do. Thank you so much for watching. And it's kaching.